Well, given that I'm a big fan of DLP solutions, I guess I've always recognized it. But in the case of Bluecore, I came from an environment that was a little more traditional legacy, where there was, like 9 data centers globally, and then 20 offices, and they were all connected on the same network with the same egresses, and I could really put my arms around the whole thing, right? And so traditional DLP technologies worked in an environment like that because everything was contained. When I arrived at Bluecore, which is the first fully cloud native organization that I've worked with, I said, okay, this is a different kind of problem now, because we don't have anything on-prem. There's no servers in our offices. There's not a shred of data there, right? Our offices have the same technology as your average Starbucks, I like to say, right? And then we don't have any colos or anything like that. We're completely hosted in Google Cloud from a product side. And then it's the corporate side, which probably is constituted of 70 SaaS applications that run the business, things like Slack and GitHub and Jira, all the usual suspects. Well, that data is all somewhere else. I can't put my arms around it, right? So there's no containment strategy that works there. There's only a hygiene strategy that works. And the ones that came to light for me first were GitHub and Slack, in that they're environments that take a lot of free-form data from virtually anybody in the company, which means that there's bound to be missteps when it comes to data handling. And I focused on GitHub first, and it was really interesting because I did a little presentation on GitHub secrets and so forth to the engineering staff. And our CEO was standing in the back. He walked through the room, and he was standing in the back, and then he came up to me afterward and he goes, "What about Slack?" And I was like, exactly. And so that's where we started with those two. And this was prior to me actually engaging with Nightfall, and I had done some casting about figuring out, like, well, this is what I believe would need to happen. It's going to need to be API based. It's going to need to have a lot of connections into a lot of different platforms. And I found Nightfall, and I went full steam ahead. Oh, that's a great question. And the reason it's such a good question is because each one of these SaaS vendors, not all of them, but a lot of them have their own DLP technologies sort of plugged in, right? Box has something, Google Workplaces has something. A number of them have tried to put something in place. And I'm not knocking their technology. Their technologies probably work, but the problem is that they're disparate, right? I don't have a single pane of glass in order to treat DLP holistically throughout the organization and the various platforms. I'd have to go into each one of these other platforms. Now, while that's a problem in and of itself, the bigger problem with that approach is policy unification. Your policies are probably going to apply pretty consistently across all of the different SaaS platforms that you want to use. And by using Nightfall, you get to unify those policies across all of them. And even more importantly than that is that you will understand exactly how those policies are being applied very keenly. Each company that writes DLP technologies is going to do something slightly different under the hood. And so, what if I go and use Box's DLP technology to secure Box or G Suite or something like that? I don't really know how their stuff works exactly, but I know exactly how Nightfall works because I sat and created all the policies, and and they're unified across each one of those platforms. So policy unification is critical. Well, I would say that there's a relatively small labor impact. It's really easy to manage, at least in our environment. We're not that big of an organization. And so, having the Slack notifications and the links directly into the console makes it really easy for us to, step in, take some actions, and get out. So it doesn't impact us much, really. From, it's not like I needed to hire 2 people or anything like that. Right. The integrations take really no time. We recently implemented the Jira technology for scanning Jira, and me and one of my analysts did the entire integration, both historical scan and the live scanning. We did all that configuration in 20 minutes, and it's working, right? So those are really small impacts when it comes to the work needs to be done, but really big impacts when it comes to the diligence. because we can say with, with what it says on the screen there is a high level of confidence that we don't have any PII or sensitive data in our Slack environment. In our world, we're not regulated like with the healthcare and PCI and so forth, but we do have a lot of PII. And with the advent of things like GDPR and CCPA, there's a lot of rules that you have to abide by around data placement. And frankly, we do not declare Slack as a downstream data processing partner of ours, right? And we don't want to do that, right? That's not where that data should be. And only by using something like Nightfall can I say that confidently. So that's the important thing. I have to be able to say that confidently. Otherwise, we'd have to say, well, if we don't know if there's any sensitive data in there, then we just have to declare them as a downstream data processing partner, which our clients would probably look at that and say, why is Slack a downstream data processing partner of yours? We don't want them to be that. But I also need to make sure that we don't put the data in there.